I'd like to call the October 1st board meeting together regarding the A.D. Morgan Corporation versus Sarasota County School Board final order. First, we'll have the presentation by the attorneys. Mr. Hardy?
Thank you. As the board's aware, we're here today for the board to consider the recommended order of the administrative law judge in the A.D. Morgan bid protest matter and to enter a final order. We got the recommended order several weeks ago. A.D. Morgan has filed exceptions to it, and in the last 2 days I've had conversation with A.D. Morgan's attorneys, and I believe we've worked out an agreement to this, resolution to this, obviously subject to the board's approval. Let me go through that for you, because I think this will short-circuit the proceeding. I have left for each of you a proposed final order which I've drafted, which A.D. Morgan's attorney has seen and consented to. And there are copies for people who are in the audience. If you need it, there are copies with Ms. Marshall, but I'll explain what it says to you. First, the final order adopts the recommended order of the administrative law judge dated September 17th, which has the effect of denying the bid protests and upholding the school board's rankings. Second, it rejects the exceptions filed by A.D. Morgan. It indicates that A.D. Morgan has agreed to the entry of the order and forgoes its right to appeal this final order. It also states that in exchange for that, the school board agrees to waive any right it might have to seek an award of attorney's fees and costs. So if this order is entered, it concludes the bid protest proceeding with its entry, and the school board can move forward with the project. It's my understanding that Rebecca Smith from A.D. Morgan is here, or is here, and would like to address the board briefly about this.
Would you like to address the board before we have our discussion or after?
Probably after, and after any other guests may want to speak on the issue would be great.
Okay, fine.
Madam Chair, I think what would be appropriate at this point, I don't know that there are any other speakers because this is a quasi-judicial hearing and not something that the public speaks at, and I don't believe the other parties intend to speak. So what would be appropriate at this point would be for the board to entertain a motion to adopt the proposed final order as explained by me and presented to you.
Do we have such a motion?
I move that we adopt the final order.
Second.
Okay. Frank is here by phone today, and since I can't see if he pushes any buttons, Frank, do you have anything you'd like to add to this or discussion?
Yeah, just a couple short comments. Just wanted to say that I'm very happy with the outcome of the process, and I want to thank Rob Robinson and the Kirk Pinkerton Law Firm for the help. I do want to say that I'm very disappointed in this bid process, and it's been very costly to both taxpayers and costly in time, and I'd certainly hope that our TSSC would take this into account in future construction submittals. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I, too, have some concerns about the process. I was concerned that a company that was judged so much higher in the initial process, because there was 2 sets of rankings, and I thought the first set of rankings that talked about, the qualifications and were they able to do the job, and I think there was even something about local preference in there, whether or not that stands up anymore. But I was distressed to see that even though one company was further ahead, I thought, was it 4.5 or 5.4, something, I don't have my papers with me right now, but that was all put away for the second part. And it seemed like so much more weight is put on the oral presentation and not on the technical aspects of what the initial information was. So I'd like to see our committee look at those procedures and perhaps not erase the ones beforehand or incorporate them into it, but have a better way of evaluating so that everyone going into the process, I think, feels that it's fair and there isn't any the problems like this in the future. I'd like to see that.
Well,
and the other issue that I think caused problems, I think, and some of it I think is perhaps the way the press interpreted it, because it is confusing, and that had to do with the price. That make it clear that this isn't a bid process per se where they put dollar amounts in. It's where we're choosing. And I think that just needs to be clarified.
Just so the board is aware, and it's separate and apart from this particular protest, but your policy provides for a periodic review of the entire process, and that will be commenced, I believe, in the upcoming month. So there will be the opportunity to review and weigh in on that at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well,
Bridget.
excuse my voice here. I'm glad to see we're moving forward. I know the community is eager to get this project going. I think that, I said in the beginning I'm big on the process, and this is also part of it. And so therefore reading through what the judge's statements are and that we indeed did act in a legal manner, of course I would support that. I think Mrs. Brown said something that I support in the fact that perhaps there are some areas in which we'd like to review this process. We may stand on different sides right now of what the process is. I think some of to tighten the process and make sure, just as you said, that perhaps the oral presentation doesn't have as higher a weighting, but also to make sure that who's participating in those committees doesn't cause any perception of potential favoritism, as it was indicated in the judge's decision here. Not that it was exact, but it did have that perception. So, I think that we live in a very close community, and we all know one another, and that we have very qualified companies that participate in our projects, and we're very proud of them. So I think in the future, I do look forward to the board as policymakers to reviewing this policy to see if there are ways to tighten it and avoid this in the future.
Thank you. Oh, Caroline?
I'll keep you on track. I'm very glad that this is resolved and that we can begin the building of the high school, of the college. I keep forgetting we've changed it so many times, because that was foremost prominent in my mind, the need to build that in Northport as soon as we could. I'm very happy that happened. But we've been discussing reviewing the process for a while now. So it is something that will be coming up probably within 2 months as a board workshop to review the how we handle the PSI process. So it's something that we all worked on, and I think that we're all under the same guidance because we're all following the same policy. So I don't think that there's any dispute about the policy other than the fact of how it's interpreted by those making decisions. So I look forward to working on a solution for this situation. Thank you.
Frank, you had something else to add?
No, but I certainly agree with everything that's been said.
Okay. Jane?
Well, I want to agree with what's been said. I also think the process needs to be looked at. I think, to say that there's preferential treatment or preferential only relates, I think, to experience. And when I look at our experiences, I think those have to be put into the process in some way. Having done jobs with us in the past, having had great outcomes, both in meeting deadlines and coming in under budget. Those things are important to me, and I think they're important to our citizens. So I think we have to include some of these elements and we need to reevaluate. And I think that's the good part of it, is that we will reevaluate and look at it. So I'm happy with the way it's turned out, and look forward to moving into Northport and getting this college there, which the community is so excited about.
And again, for clarification, after we vote on this, the next step would be the general manager will be picked, and then we start going out to the bid process and the dollar amounts.
Well,
that has not happened yet.
This would conclude the ranking process, and then the next step would be to attempt to negotiate a contract with the first ranked firm, and then that contract would come back to you for approval, and it's the next step in the process.
And I think now would be an appropriate time for your comments. If you want to step forward to the podium, push the mic button so the red light comes on. Thank you.
First of all, good afternoon. It's nice. Push the mic button. The light is on. Okay. Can you not hear? Okay, how's that? It's nice to see all of you. Thank you for having me here today. Just in response to some of the comments, which were all well-founded, your concern about points and how those are reviewed, they are not currently cumulative. The written stands alone. It goes back to 0, and then the points are added. But I think that your concern for that certainly is valid. I'm not quite sure that I understand Chairman Kovac's comment about this process having been costly, and that out of concern for the taxpayers, maybe it needs to be considered in future scoring. I'm not sure of the exact word he used, and evaluations as you move forward looking for contractors. I'm not quite sure I understand that. But certainly I will share with you that the collective opinion of the board, which is to take a look at the practice, is embraced by many of the people in the community that have unsolicited contacted me and, shared some thoughts on how that may happen. And so I'm sure when you open it up for community input that you'll receive a tremendous amount of really good quality input on how the conversation between the interest of the school board and the service from the construction community may come, to be a little bit more amenable to all. So I congratulate you for that. They will be pleased. And as I said at the very beginning of this proceeding, that we did not make the decision to move forward lightly, that it was an issue with regard to the overall integrity of the process, and how, while A.D. Morgan was standing in the spokesperson position, that it was an impact issue to industry and how construction services are contracted for. So I appreciate your comments today and look forward, if you'd like my input as you move forward in that process. I would be happy to share some other thoughts. But what I'm really here today to do is to thank you and to bring closure to what has been an extensive and intense time as we all look together at the process. And following this protracted exercise, we received the judge's ruling, and it comes as no surprise that we disagree with his decision. Although there is much that we would like to say, I'll keep my comments brief. Our team is obviously disappointed with the outcome. However, we accept the board's decision and this recommended final order solely based on our concern that the project not be further delayed. We look forward to the future opportunities with Sarasota County Schools as we continue to serve the district with the same quality and success that we have delivered in the past. And I am sincere when I tell you how much I appreciate that you have allowed for this in your process. We have all learned a lot about the process, not only from its inception, but as it's been tested and moved forward. And I just speak for the integrity of your counsel and how he has represented your interest throughout the entire process. It was very professionally exercised and done very well. And we wish the project and the school district great success with the SDC building. And if there is anything that we can do to offer any further support, please let us know. Thank you again for your time and attention.
Thank you for your comments. And we, too, look forward to working with you in the future. To share your input on how we might better adjust the process, you can go to SarasotaCountySchools.net and click on School Board, and there's a way to send all of us a message at one time. You don't have to individually do it. And you also might want to share that with Scott Limpy, perhaps on the same email, and send it to him and CC it to us, and then we'll know that it goes to the right person, and that while we may not have the chance to give you input on every item that is given to us, we will be sure to let you know that we will take those things into consideration, as I'm sure I'm getting a nod from Mr. Limpy in the back. We welcome that input because it's much better to get it on the front side rather than on the back side like this. And it's unfortunate that we had to bring it to this point, but thank you for putting your personal interests aside and your business for what's best for our county, and we appreciate that.
Well, you are exactly correct, and that's as we have done. And I will tell you, there's much about your process and the selection committee and the integrity with which they move forward that is to be celebrated. I mean, it is a joy to have been through the process. Obviously, we disagree with the outcome, but there's really much to be celebrated. And I would also steer the group to our industry council or our organization, GCBX, who can speak for the community of construction. And it doesn't have to be a personal opinion, but again, I appreciate your inclusion, and anything that I can do, I'm here to help.
We will.
Thank you very much.
You. Any other comments at this point? Well, then I guess we are ready to vote. All those in favor of the motion before us signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes by unanimous consent. And that concludes the board meeting. The final order meeting.
That's correct. We are now going to go into a litigation meeting that is not open to the public. But we can recess this meeting to do that, and then we will do the litigation meeting, and that will be the end of the school board's business for the day.
Okay, so we will stand in recess, and y'all can't join us in this next meeting, but thank you for coming.